And
And it's recording.
mhm.
Okay, should we just get started then?
Yep.
Okay. Hey everyone, we're gonna jump in with one of the activities for the program that we learned about. It is called the name game, and it's as simple as just sharing your name and what it means.
Okay.
Daisy, you want to ask me what my name means?
Yeah,
What
what
does
is
your
your
name,
name?
Brad?
I've been told it means person who is not funny.
Is that
Oh,
I'm gonna have to look that up when we're done.
yeah.
That's super funny.
Well, my last name is Nelson. So supposedly I have a lot of European heritage for son of Nell. That's where that
Huh.
originally came from. So yep, there was some guy who was Nell's son, and then he was very productive with his birthing, I guess, because that name is very common.
That is awesome. Well, I don't have any idea what like my like maiden last name means, but my like the name Daisy just means day's eye, which is like super boring, like the beginning of the day or something. I don't know.
All
I was
right.
always disappointed about that.
Really? I think it's fun. It reminds me of flowers. I'm sure that's what a lot of people think of, though.
That's definitely why my mom named me that for sure. But
Okay. All right. Brad, Herman, do you know what your last name means?
Uh no, I don't, and I could make a pretty bad joke, but a lot of people used to say I am her man whenever I had a girlfriend in high school, and that got old
oh.
pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'd
Uh
imagine that getting old.
yeah. No, I'm more familiar with my own nicknames, but again, those probably shouldn't be a part of the name game. But
All right.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about group work and the details and process of a specific program involving Chinese immigrants. But before we do that, I want to take a moment to reflect on our own experiences and memories of entering into like a new group or a community. So just think back to a time when you were new to town, school, a job, or identity, activities, interests, like anything like that. And just think about how you felt when you like first showed up into that new like group or community. And I'm gonna ask one of you if you'd be willing to share like what things made you feel comfortable or uncomfortable. I'm calling on Tessa.
Oh, well, definitely say starting at practicum was uncomfortable. Learning how to interact in a professional way with clients, that was new. Well, I guess not 100% new, but in the way that I was doing it was new. So,
Yeah. Like what was uncomfortable? Like what things about it made you feel uncomfortable?
I just didn't know how to build rapport with children. It's like I was
Yeah.
an adult and it was just like, what do I do? And apparently it's not too bad. You just ask them what their interests are and then get interested in their interests.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Okay. How about like the communities that you have belonged to for a period of time? Like how have they helped you like when you had to deal with like a transition or like a struggle in your life? Brad, this is all you.
so how has the community helped me grow or become more accustomed to the surroundings? Is that what the question is essentially?
No, like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, just how, like, so the communities in your life that are already established, like, how have they sort of served you through
Help you
life
adapt.
up and down? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you asked about the communities and how they would allow me to adapt when those things are the most familiar to me. So they would make me feel the most at home, which then would give me a good base to adapt and maybe grow in a sense or change to adapt. But having a good foundation, having something to go home to, only gets you further when you adapt. If that's making sense.
Totally.
Just like support system.
Yeah, yeah, that
Okay,
sounds
so
good.
for thanks for sharing about those things, your experiences. And with those things in mind, let's move on to talking about Parents Beyond Oceans.
Cool. All right. Well, this is our introduction page. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Um, so Sunset Park is located in Brooklyn, New York, and it's the home of the largest Chinese population in in the city and the largest Chinatown, because New York is more than one. It's one fourth of the population is Chinese, and they are one of the most, like the Asians there, are one of the most likely of any racial groups to live in poverty. So the Center for Family Life operates in Sunset Park, and they are like a multi-service operation where there's casework, advocacy. They assist with housing, employment, recreation, and just like for the families in the area. And they developed the Parents Beyond Ocean support group for Chinese immigrant families specifically to just adapt to their new environment.
Yeah, so Parents Beyond Oceans, right, is a community-based organization that was first introduced in 2011 in New York. Obviously, it's spanning across a couple boroughs to get everybody who's foreign to get connected. So it was designed for parents so they can share and process their immigration stories and connect on that level, and possibly go into some traumas that might have been associated with the immigration process. As we know, it might not be the easiest, it can be fractious at times. So the goals of the group are to help Chinese parents connect with their children, feel more involved within their communities, right? Living in poverty, you're going to be connected to your neighbors if they're also in poverty, reducing isolation, getting people in touch with one another to create solidarity, and obviously to build community, right?
Yes. All right. So there's some Chinese immigrant risk factors specifically, and some of those are just like poor mental health, just because of like the stressors that they have that are more specific for like poverty and like the things that they're dealing with specifically. Migration stress, which is a whole different set of stress factors that come from being in a new culture or a new environment. Intergenerational stress, because like the children are going to adapt differently than the parents in these situations. A lot of times they like having like come up with new social connections at school that might challenge like more traditional Chinese family experiences. And so there can be cultural differences in parenting expectations and styles due to that. Limited access to just support from the system because they don't know how to access the system, or there's like language barriers that prevent them from being able to connect with some of the helps that are out there and things like that for them.
I think we went out of rotation.
Oh, did we? Did I accidentally take that one when I wasn't supposed to?
Yeah, you might.
I think this one might be yours.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I can just
I don't know. I think I was supposed to do the last one, but it really doesn't matter. But you should do this one.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. So the benefits of support groups for Chinese immigrants is that uh they they approach the Chinese immigrant group from a strengths-based and empowerment perspective that like takes like what they're currently good at and tries to like be like, oh, this is how you integrate that with your current situation. So it focuses a lot on building trust and vulnerability and problem-solving skills within the group. And with that resilience based perspective, it allows them to address the migration journey with other people who've experienced that, and just allows for building a hopeful future and encourages just more social supports with people who are have similar situations to each other. And it allows for processing and adjustment with developing mutual aid, and especially after loss of like connections from their country of origin, they might not have the support systems that they had back in China. And so that's one of the things that they're really trying to build with this support group.
Yeah, so with the group process, how do they get people involved? So social workers are going to be doing the outreach for the Center for Family Life. Referrals are made through the government and other communal resources in the area, right? The boroughs are obviously going to get people involved. Poverty's something that people see. So maybe there's word of mouth that occurs as well to get people into these groups. Who participates? Obviously, immigrants, Chinese immigrants, their parents or grandparents, not as many kids as the picture might lead on to. The group's around 8 to 10 members, right? A relatively small group, keeping it connected, making sure everybody feels comfortable in the space is obviously important. And like with most mental health, female participation is a little bit higher than men. And getting people to the groups, food is usually something that's used to shore that up. So obviously the center offered free meals and childcare while the sessions took place.
Oops. The process of starting a new group begins with hiring 2 bilingual facilitators. The meetings are held in community health care or health centers or local schools. The groups meet for 1 to 2 hours once a week for 10 weeks. They begin their meetings discussing the participants' self-care. Each meeting also incorporates an activity with a focus on empowerment. Each meeting closes with an opportunity for members to share their feelings and wishes.
All right. So the beginning sessions focus on introductions, like going over the purpose of the group, establishing norms, like the structure, and encouraging by like cohesiveness by just like discovering commonalities between different members who are there. The importance of creating a safe space for group members is really, really like expressed during these first ones, so that way people feel safe in expressing their stories as the group continues. Um, the first session includes the name game, which we already played, where people are just asked to share the name of their origin to create like more connectedness. Um, and during the first few sessions, they create a briefcase folder to represent where they were from, what brought them to the US, and in hopes that like and this briefcase is going to be used to represent a lot of things as the group goes on, and it's used in every session, and it just goes over hopes about Eastern values that they brought with them and will eventually incorporate Western values. And it's decorated by the individual, and it just encourages like new values and the traditional values coming together in a sense.
Right. So for
Oh, sorry.
Okay. No, you're good. I think you're
Go
one
back.
back
I'm
there.
trying to move the there.
So for the second and the third session, they do more group work, obviously. In the second session, they do an activity where they use a map and pins and sort of guide a line between everybody in the group's home. Right. This will obviously connect people literally and then obviously in story too, because the people are able to share their immigration story, their migration story, and where they're from and what that means to them. And then during the third session, instead of having a map illustrate your background, you have an object illustrate your background and what that object means to you culturally and how important it is today having it with you now. Right. I know I have a ton of things in my room that I can look at and it brings me back right to a memory of where I got it or what it means now. So having that in a group setting is obviously going to bring people together, but it may also bring people more in touch with where they're from too, just looking back. Okay.
During sessions 4 and 5, members are encouraged to reflect on traditional values from their childhood. These values are written on butcher paper and shared with the group. The leader facilitates a discussion on how these values affected the members as children. And the members then each choose 5 cultural values from the list to add to their briefcase. And in the 5th session, the same activity is repeated using US and Western values, and members are encouraged to identify values that they appreciate for themselves and their families.
In session 6, group members are then asked to record 10 descriptions of themselves using both Eastern and Western values, like trying to kind of remember the old ones that are super important to them and also incorporating kind of like newer ones that they've been experiencing in the West and descriptions, and they are asked to share their descriptions with the support group, and they are asked to find like one part of their life that they want to improve on and as like a goal. And during session 7, this task will continue by making like a staircase image in which the group members assess the steps needed to meet the new goal, and then they're asked to draw from their personal strengths and values as inspiration for reaching that goal.
So leading up to the last sessions, right, 8 and 9 before 10, right? The 8th session is kind of like complaints and grievances, where you get to sort of complain as a group, which maybe unfortunately, maybe fortunately, brings people together. It does build a sense of community when you can complain about the same thing. I know that rings true for me. Being a hater does bring you into a group. May not be the best group, but it's a group. In the 9th session, facilitators, along with the group members, create a positive inventory checklist. Now, this is more of the positive complaining checklist, where they record positive things and positive traits. Facilitators have the group share their lists and encourage that the members comment and add to the traits of their peers, right? So what you learned with the group, you try to also help with the next members.
Okay. Hey.
As the group meets for its final session, they focus on their success. They reflect on their personal growth and are encouraged to contribute a dish for a potluck that symbolizes their individual transformation. Members are encouraged to share new perspectives and how they developed. And finally, all members who completed the group are given a graduation certificate.
And so when evaluating Parents Beyond Oceans, 2 anonymous pre-tests and post-tests were used to determine the effectiveness of the group. One of them was designed by the Center for Family Life, and the other one was the social support scale that was created by Heller and Prociano. Sorry, I apologize. They were given at the end of the first session and at the very beginning of the last session, just to kind of record that growth that happened, and to see if there was like any regression or issues with the support group. So the assessment given from the Center of Family Life focused on determining if there was reduction in torn identities from Eastern and Western values, and the social support scale focused on feelings of connectedness and support in the community, and if they were able to build community. And so,
right, so statistically speaking, right, between the pre and post surveys, the average score on the Center for Family Life scale increased on average by about 14%, 13.64. The second most positive change on the pre and post surveys was the belief that they should be treated with respect and equal treatment in the U.S. This concept increased about 18.18% on the pre-test score. Results demonstrated that the group members could utilize new strategies to address raising bicultural children in the U.S. and adapting to life in the U.S. The greatest change occurred in feeling less homesick and isolated. Members were able to build connections with one another and establish their own social media groups to continue the support.
So every study has limitations. The study was limited. The Center of Family Life was unable to determine the group's long-term impact. The center's facilitators and staff are limited in their understanding of written Chinese, and this could have influenced the pre and post-test accuracy. The facilitators distributed the assessments, and it could have resulted in dishonest answers to, like, just due to bias. Facilitators were unable to determine why some people chose to drop out of the group attendance. So that's just sort of like a blank page. We don't have any answers for that. The center scale has not been statistically validated.
all right. So just some like connections to material that we've been reading in class from the textbook is group work is efficient. It provides a sense of commonality. It offers a greater variety of resources and viewpoints with other members of the group. It promotes a sense of belonging and community, and something that we can really notice from Parents Beyond Oceans is that like a lot of it was focused on like, oh, hey, we are all in the same boat together, and let's figure out how to help each other strategize and like come up with values to promote like a sense of community. It allows individuals to practice skills in a safe space. It provides opportunity for feedback between the various members, and it allows for learning and strengthening commitment through like accountability, essentially like goal building, and it does this from a strength-based perspective.
So probably going to talk about this at the end. Another group's case study had to do with improvisation as a group skill and how improv can bring people together. I think that concept could be very useful in Parents Beyond Oceans. There wasn't really a lean into humor, and obviously every culture has their funnies, their jokes, their comics, whatever it might be that bring laughter into an area. And I think incorporating that into Parents Beyond Oceans would be could potentially enhance the existing outcomes and provide additional benefits. It may even give them an extra week in advance, right? Could add a week. Having a humor week group could be beneficial to the program in that regard.
Oh, sorry. My computer glitched out. Apologize. Okay. So one thing that we were really interested in talking about was like integrating the Parents Beyond Oceans with the practicum experience that we're each doing. So like just take a moment to consider the populations that you are currently working with. And I guess I'll just call on Daisy for the first, question. If you just take a minute to think about it, how do you think we can improve our cultural competency and our knowledge of practice group work and social supports from like strength-based perspectives when we're working with populations, especially ones that are maybe really different from us?
I think like the biggest thing that's been helpful to me so far is just having like my supervisory time, and then also I have another practicum student at my same placement, and we're constantly like rehashing things that happened and how they were handled, and like was that the best way to handle that, or like, and also just like giving each other pointers. Like I heard you say this, and I know that might not be the best way to like approach that situation with this person because whatever, right? So I think just like accountability really, and having people to be accountable to, and just like being willing to learn, and then also like taking the opportunities that you have specifically to learn specific things. Like we've had a ton of trainings at my practicum that kind of seemed like a lot. It was a little overwhelming, but it was good. Like just being willing to do that, like I've learned so much.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And Brad, how do you think that these improvements or these considerations that Daisy mentioned could help the individuals that we work with specifically?
I mean, having a group, having any kind of sense of community where you're at means you're not alone. And when you're not alone, you have a different way to get perspective. And once you can get perspectives that aren't your own, you're going to make a difference because they're not going to get complacent with how you think. So again, like Daisy's lucky to have somebody in the practicum with her that's also in the class at the same place. That's something I don't have. I'm in an employment-based one. So the stakes are a little bit higher in a sense. Like there's people being paid for things and I'm being paid for things. So my perspective isn't valued the same way as somebody who's been there, who's tenured in the position. So I have to take that into account. So I'm probably getting off topic a little bit, but that's where my head went with that one. I'll work on that answer.
Okay. And what kind of like recruitment strategies have we used that like we noticed that was similar with Parents Beyond Oceans and tie in well with the practicum experience? Like, is there like certain things that you noticed that like maybe that your practicum agency does to recruit like clients and people to get them involved with like treatment or support in any kind of situation?
I could say so we have a lot of meetings that are required, but the meetings that people show up at are the ones we have food at. Like we have food, and pretty soon we have people from upstairs and downstairs and people who we didn't even know were going to be there that just like showed up. And so I think food is a big thing. And I noticed in the Parents Beyond Borders that they have like childcare.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's also huge because you just don't go places when you have kids. It is just too much of a hassle, especially stuff like this where you're expected to participate and not be distracted. So yeah, I would say we don't have childcare at my placement, but like it would definitely be a great recruitment for any kind of group.
Yeah, I actually really agree with that. Like the food and childcare is really helpful because like it motivates people like to come and get like a free meal. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you are in a situation where it's challenging, like financially to provide yourself with food, that can always be a really great way to also get people connected with one another. It's a great way to provide support for people who are like financially struggling. It's just a really good way to help bring in those people, individuals that you want to help in those populations.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And then just sort of summing up our article, right? Parents Beyond Oceans, the curriculum focuses on a cultural competency, group work, social support, and strengthens resilient-based perspectives in the community of Brooklyn and the other boroughs. Evaluation of the Parents Beyond Oceans shows improvements in acculturation, stress, immigration trauma, perspectives of immigration experiences, and social identities, and the effective parenting and grandparenting, right? We talked about that childcare that's going to hopefully help the parents. Limitation of the studies include limited focus on long-term impact, limited comprehension of written Chinese, majority of participants being women, limited demographic information collected, potential bias in results, lack of consideration of intergroup variation, and unvalidated Parents Beyond Oceans scale. Despite limitations, obviously the Parents Beyond Oceans has continued to make a significant impact in Sunset Park with plans to replicate and expand the program to other Chinese immigrant populations in the future.
All right. And here is our works cited page for the references that we used. And this is just the works cited page for specifically the art that was used as well. All right. Well,
Awesome.
everybody, thank you for watching our presentation, and we hope that you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. If you have any questions, just please feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we'd love to answer them. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, let me stop the recording.